last time I read a book by Isaac Asimov was when I was like 10. I couldn't even tell you what book it was. It might have been iRobot. Whatever the case, I was not a fan, and I promptly went back to my Daniel Pinkwater and Tintin books from the school library. But Asimov is kind of a big deal. He's on the proverbial Mount Rushmore of sci-fi writers for a reason. If I'm going to keep writing sci-fi, I need to know the history. I need to go back and catch up with some of the big names I skipped early on. I need to momentarily put aside the fact that this guy was the handsiest dude on the 20th century convention circuit and focus on the work. Let's talk about robots. The Caves of Steel. Space was colonized a long time ago. There's animosity between the Earthers and the Spacers. The decadent Spacers have built robots to do their labor, and the robots are starting to be used on Earth, much to the consternation of many Earthers, especially those in the medievalist movement, who look to return to the land. When a prominent Spacer is murdered, New York cop Elijah Lige Bailey and advanced Spacer robot R. Daniil Olivaw are put on the case. R. Daniil is particularly problematic for the Earthers because, unlike typical robots, he's basically indistinguishable from a human. If you're enjoying this video, why not buy my book? Flight of the Pangolin is the story of an intrepid group of heroes who decide to exit the solar system over the objections of an isolationist faction. There's actually a lot more going on than that. There's space pirates, a giant spider for no reason, all kinds of other things. Buy it now online wherever you buy books or at our website, www.thepangolinrepublic.com. You can also get fun t-shirts and random other stuff if you want. Asimov believed that science fiction wasn't necessarily a genre in itself, that sci-fi could be applied to any genre. This is something most of us, I think, would agree with. He explores the idea here in The Caves of Steel by presenting us with a sci-fi detective story. If we're talking about sci-fi detective stories, the first one that probably immediately springs to mind is the film Blade Runner, based on Philip K. Dick's The Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. Dick definitely owes a lot to Asimov here, but even though Sheep is by far the better story, caves walked so sheep could run. Reading The Caves of Steel is a bit like watching Citizen Kane. It's a bit boring because you're familiar with a lot of the beats already, but it's not the book's fault that popular culture has been stripping it for parts for the last 70 years. So it's hard to properly judge it for its entertainment value. Asimov has a reputation for being maybe a bit clinical and plot-driven, with poorly sketched characters. At least that's what I've read and what's kept me from a deeper dive before now. I think that's maybe a bit overstated, but the characters are given a backseat to the exploration of capital I ideas for sure. Lige and R. Daniil are fleshed out just barely enough. The rest of the characters are just kind of there as the story needs them. Asimov is no Agatha Christie. I think even he would agree. The mystery of who killed Dr. Sarton is never very compelling in itself. The law of economy of characters plays a factor here as well, but Asimov plays fair with the reader and all the clues are present. It's just not terrifically compelling. Lige Bailey isn't the best detective ever. Twice in the book, both times far from the climax of the story, Lige launches into one of those mystery-solving explanatory tirades, which were probably a well-worn literary trope by the 50s. Of course, he's beyond wrong both times, which was fun. I'm not sure if this is a vestige of the story originally being serialized, but it makes Lige look pretty stupid, and it always annoys me when my protagonist is stupid. You can tell Asimov is mostly interested in exploring his concepts of the Spacer's civilization, the interaction between robots and human civilizations, things like that. This is where the book shines. A lot of the ideas here are not far off from the conversations we're having today regarding AI, except while I'm sure it made logical sense at the time, Asimov had it backwards from the topsy-turvy, illogical world we currently live in. We don't need to manufacture expensive robots to perform menial tasks. We can use people for that. It's the smart people and artists we can replace with AI. We'll see how that goes. Overall, this was an okay read. It was mostly a historical curiosity for me, and I don't feel compelled to read further into the series at the moment. I might circle back to the series later, but I have some stuff I'm more eager to get to in the TBR pile. I do have more Asimov coming up eventually. Nemesis is around here somewhere, and Foundation too, which I like the show for what it is, but having not read the book, I can tell that they've had very little to do with each other anyway. Very easy to tell watching Foundation that most of this has nothing to do with the books. So, those will happen in the future probably. See you there! In the future, I mean. I'll see you in the future.